And joining us today in our Book Talk segment, great to welcome a woman who's written a book that I'm sure is going to help a lot of parents out there. It's called How Toddlers Thrive, What Parents Can Do Today for Children Ages 2 to 5 to Plant the Seeds of Lifelong Success. We're joined by Tovah Klein from up in New York today. And Dr. Klein, good to have a chance to chat with you for a few minutes. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I guess everybody says toddlers, they're cute and everything, but those are not easy times for parents, right? So this is a timely book, I would imagine.
I hope so. That's the goal, because the toddler years can be, I think, perplexing and quite a challenge.
What is it about that age? I mean, everybody goes through it, obviously. I guess some more than others, or some worse than others, I should say.
Right.
But is that the biggest issue parents have early on, after maybe the first few weeks of an infant being brought home?
Yeah, I mean, what happens is we have our infants, and obviously we learn their communication, and we comfort them, we feed them. We do a lot of holding them and taking care of them. But for the toddler who's up on their feet, and certainly once they get language, which is around the age of 2, they're really separating, and they're starting to realize, hey, my own person, and I have my own ideas, and they are not always what mommy or daddy want. But, hey, I really need mommy and daddy, and I really love them. And so they're caught between this excitement about being out in the world and on their own, and this real need to know that mommy or daddy are there for them no matter what. And so I call it a push-pull of the toddler years. It's just their first attempts at becoming independent, and that's where you get what people call willfulness or defiance. It's really that young child is still really a baby saying, hey, I have my own ideas. And that's where it starts to become a challenge for parents.
Particularly for first-time parents, if that's the first child, that's the first time they have to do a little disciplining, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really about limit setting. We always talk about how much young children need routines, because if you have a routine, that's like setting a limit. So, for example, mealtime, we sit at a table, we eat our food at the table. That's setting a limit. When the child gets up, you say, oh, you're all done. What it says to them is, when we have a meal, we sit at the table. We don't walk around with food. And you don't even have to go so far as discipline when you have a lot of routines around getting dressed, bath time, dinner time. Anything that you do every day needs a routine, because that's what helps children know what's going to happen and feel that they have some control.
Yeah, it provides almost a security, in a sense.
Exactly.
Right? They know what's coming up next in most cases.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they have no sense of time at this age. I think it's hard for adults, any of us, to really understand what it would be like to not have a sense of time, because we look at our watches or we look at the day of the week and we say, oh, what do I have to do today? It's Monday. Whereas young children, their brains have no capacity to tell time, so those routines give them that organization. Right, and you're right, it makes them feel safe. Oh, I know what's next.
Yeah, I don't remember what I was doing at 2, but I remember when I was a little kid. Yeah, you're right. Time is much slower then. You don't really have an aspect of it, do you?
No, and that's both the delight of toddlers, is that they live in the moment. So when you're in a joyful moment with your child, they're right, and they're like, playing with something, and they're joyous, and they're sharing it with you. But they don't think about, oh, I need to stop this in a few minutes and move on. So the downside of living in the moment and not having a sense of time is it's very hard to move from one thing to another. Like, finish playing so we can leave for school is very hard for them.
Mm. From your research, talking to, I'm sure, many parents, what's the biggest mistake you see with parents dealing with that age group?
I think the biggest mistake that any of us make, particularly with our firstborns, but we could do this with any child, is thinking that they're older than they are. Mm-hmm. So our expectations become much more than what the child can actually do, and part of that is, once our children start to have language and can really talk and communicate better, first of all, there's relief for us. I think there's relief for the child as well. Oh, I can communicate a little bit more. But we start to think they're much older. So one moment you're having a nice conversation and saying, remember when we go to dinner at that restaurant, you have to be quiet. Child says, oh, yes, I know, be quiet at the restaurant. But then you get there. The child can't sit still and can't keep quiet. That's because they're 2 or 3 or 4. And we think that they're much older than they are. And so when we kind of bring our expectations down a bit to their level, we actually treat them differently and in a more supportive way. And that's really what my book is about. If you understand something about how slow development is, but that this is really also a really important, crucial time, we kind of back off a little and say, oh, okay, I understand what my child's doing. And just switching parenting techniques a little bit can really make life that much easier with a toddler.
You talk about particularly taking things slow, a 7-day view of eating habits that can help with mealtime, right?
Yeah, yes. One of the things that happens, I think, for all of us today is there's so much information out there and we get very worried. And food is, that's the way we nurture. Many cultures nurture through food. And, there's lots of news reports about, good foods, bad foods. But young children, they don't necessarily eat well every day, and yet it's adults that bring the food into the house or serve it. So if you think about your child over the course of a week, they're probably eating good stuff most of the time, and nutritionists always say, look, it's what they eat in a week, not what they eat in a day or 2 days. So a weekend filled with birthday parties, all right, maybe you didn't have the best food, but the rest of the week you're going to go back to your kind of normative eating. And the other thing about young children is they don't eat if they're not hungry. So their eating tends to go up and down.
Right.
They go through these periods of just being so hungry, probably because they're going through growth spurts. And then they go through periods where they just eat less. Unlike us adults who we tend to eat because it's mealtime, they don't necessarily do that. So that's really a message to parents that you can relax. You don't need to micromanage every single meal, but really think about, is my child doing okay generally with food?
I guess the biggest thing, and you have a lot in the book about it, and that's the biggest issue with the toddlers, tantrums. How do you handle those?
This is the hallmark of toddlerhood. The first thing about tantrums is to, I think as a parent, is to understand that the part of the brain that handles emotions, and emotions are particularly intense in toddlers. Joy is really high, anger and frustration they fall apart. And it's to understand that part of the brain that handles emotions is very, very new and is going to be developing for the next 20 years. So that's what the neuroscience is showing us, that part of the brain actually finishes developing in the early 20s. So if you go backwards from that, you're like, wow, my 3 or 4 or 5-year-old is really brand new at handling emotions. So the best thing is if you know what sets your child off, and if you know that being out in that late afternoon when your child is tired sets them off, then it's probably not the best time to go to the shopping mall. So we have to really think as parents, is my child hungry, tired? But once they've had the tantrum, if you can appreciate they are just flooded by emotion and they are just at wit's end and they don't know how to handle it, they can have a tantrum. The most important piece is when they're done, that the parent is there and says to them, boy, you were so angry or you were so upset, and reunites with them, hugs them and says, let's do something else now. So that you're not revisiting it, but saying to them, it's okay that you were that upset and I'm still here for you.
Yeah.
Kids outgrow this for sure, as long as you don't shame them for being that upset.
Yeah. Kids have a right to get upset, but you don't want it to become where they start to control you that way.
Right.
That's the issue there, yeah.
Right.
Well, great advice in the book. We just touched on a few of the topics, but it's called How Toddlers Thrive. We've been talking with Dr. Tovah P. Klein today. And, Doctor, you want to give out a website to get a hold of you in the book?
I do have a website. It's exactly like the book title, HowToddlersThrive.com, and people can sign up for a free e-newsletter that has tips on toddlers, and the next one is going to be on eating, which is a hot issue for parents. And it comes out every few weeks. And there's also a Facebook page.
Great, and we'll also put it on our website, too. People can order it there as well. But, Doctor, pleasure talking to you. Good luck with the book, and also the foreword by Sarah Jessica Parker, so that's a nice thing to have there as well.
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
If you'd like to order the book we're talking about, please go to DougMilesMedia.com and enter the author's name in the Amazon search box. Thank you for listening. Please come back soon for more conversations here at DougMilesMedia.com. This has been a presentation of Doug Miles Media, all rights reserved. You can listen to or download previous programs at iTunes, Stitcher.com, or Doug Miles Media.